My name's Jake Miller, and I've got a story that'll make you cheer, laugh, and maybe even grab some popcorn. It starts with HOA Karen. Yeah, that Karen Thompson, losing her mind over my dog, Buddy, peeing on her precious white fence. But here's the kicker, that fence was on my land, and I turned her meltdown into my masterpiece by painting my piece of it neon pink and slapping a Buddy Zone sign on it. That's right, my goofy Labrador sparked a neighborhood war, and I'm still grinning about it. I continue with the story, bet laissez-faire if you want to consistently win any conflicts. It all went down on a blazing Tuesday afternoon in our sleepy Ohio suburb. The sun was high, the lawns were manicured, and the air buzzed with that summer vibe, kids on bikes, sprinklers hissing, the works. I was strolling with Buddy, my 80-pound bundle of chaos and cuddles. He's a golden retriever with a heart of gold and a bladder that doesn't quit. This guy marks everything: mailboxes, trees, my buddy Tom's new sneakers once. I usually just shrug it off, but that day he locked eyes on Karen's fence. You know the type. HOA approved, freshly painted, so white it practically glowed. Before I could yank his leash, Buddy strutted up, lifted his leg, and unleashed a stream like he was tagging it for the world to see. I froze, watching that yellow trickle slide down her perfect pickets, and my stomach dropped. Buddy, no. I hissed, but he just wagged his tail like he'd won a prize. Then came the scream. Jake Miller. Karen exploded out of her house like a caffeinated banshee, her yoga pants swishing and her blonde bob bouncing like it was alive. I swear, the whole street went silent. Birds stopped chirping, kids froze mid-bike ride. She charged at me, eyes blazing, finger wagging like a weapon. Your disgusting mutt just defiled my property, she shrieked, her voice hitting octaves I didn't know existed. I stood there, leash dangling, fighting the urge to crack up as Buddy sat there panting, proud as hell. $500, she spat. That's what you owe me, emotional distress, repaint, the works. $500 for a little dog pee? I snorted, couldn't help it, and that lit her fuse. You think this is funny? She roared, her face turning a shade of red I'd only seen on fire trucks. I'll have your head, Jake. The HOA will bury you. I tried to play it cool. Karen, chill, I said, hands up like I was calming a wild animal. It's just pee. I'll grab a hose. We're good. But she was already in full meltdown mode, whipping out her phone to snap pics of the crime scene. This is an outrage, she yelled. A violation. You'll regret this. She stormed off, leaving me and Buddy in a cloud of her lavender perfume and my own disbelief. I looked down at him, his big dumb grin beaming up at me, and muttered, You just started World War III, didn't you? But as I trudged home, something nagged at me. That fence, it didn't look right. It was too close to my driveway, too far over the line. Back at my place, I dug out my property survey from the hall closet. Yeah, I'm the nerd with a binder for everything. My hand shook as I traced the lines with a flashlight and a beer in hand. Holy crap. Her fence was 10 centimeters onto my land. My land. My heart raced, and a grin crept across my face. This wasn't just about Buddy's pee anymore. This was about justice. Karen wanted to play hardball? Fine. I'd play smarter. I leaned back in my chair, sipping that beer, and started scheming. She had no idea what was coming, and I couldn't wait to see her face when it hit. So, what do you think? Am I the hero here, or should I have just forked over the cash and called it a day? Drop a comment below, because this is just the beginning, and trust me, it's about to get wild. Karen's plotting something behind her perfect curtains, and I'm ready to find out what. So there I was, Jake Miller, sitting on my porch with a cold beer and a property survey that felt like a winning lottery ticket. Karen Thompson, HOA queen and my new mortal enemy, had no clue I'd just discovered her perfect little fence was squatting 10 centimeters onto my turf. My dog Buddy's pee had kicked off this mess, but now it was personal. I wasn't about to let her steamroll me with her $500 demands and HOA threats. Oh no, I was going to have some fun with this. And trust me, it was about to get good. The next morning, I woke up buzzing with energy. The sun was barely up, but I was already in my garage, digging through old paint cans like a man possessed. I found it buried under a stack of camping gear, a half-full can of neon pink paint from a prank I'd pulled on my buddy Tom a couple Halloweens back. It was garish, loud, and absolutely perfect. I grabbed a brush, a ladder, and a smirk, then marched out to that fence with Buddy trotting behind me, his tail wagging like he knew we were up to no good. I measured it out, 10 centimeters from the property line, my little slice of rebellion, and started painting. The pink went on thick and bright, glowing against Karen's pristine white like a middle finger in Technicolor. I stepped back, admiring my work, and thought, "This is for you, buddy." He barked in approval, and I swear I felt like a king. But I wasn't done. I ran to my shed, grabbed a scrap of wood, and scrawled "Buddy's Zone" in black marker, big, bold letters that screamed ownership. I nailed it right onto my pink strip, right where her precious fence met my victory. My heart pounded with this wild mix of glee and defiance. I could already picture Karen's face, those pinched lips, that horrified gasp, and it fueled me. I snapped a pic with my phone, the neon pink popping against the morning light, and sent it to Tom with a text. "Guess who's winning now?" He shot back, "Dude, you're insane. She's gonna flip." And flip she did. I didn't have to wait long. By noon, I was grilling burgers in my backyard. Buddy sprawled out in the grass, gnawing on a toy when I heard it, the clack of Karen's heels on my driveway. "Jake Miller," she bellowed, storming around the house like a hurricane in flip-flops. I turned, spatula in hand, and there she was, hands on hips, eyes locked on that pink stripe like it was a personal insult. "What is that?" she demanded, her voice trembling with rage. I took a slow bite of my burger, chewing like I had all the time in the world, then grinned. "That's my property, Karen. Survey says you're over the line. Thought I'd spruce it up." She blinked, mouth flapping open like a fish out of water, and I swear I saw steam coming out of her ears. "This is vandalism," she screeched. "An HOA atrocity. You'll pay for this, literally." I shrugged, wiping ketchup off my chin. "Take it up with the board, Karen. That's my land, my paint, my rules." She sputtered, words failing her, then whipped out her phone again, more pics, more evidence for her war chest. "You're a disgrace, Jake," she spat, then spun around and marched off, muttering about lawyers and fines. I flipped my burger, unfazed. She could rant all she wanted. I had the survey, and I had the upper hand. That night, I couldn't sleep. My brain was racing, replaying her meltdown and plotting my next move. I knew Karen wouldn't let this slide. She'd come back swinging, and I had to be ready. I scrolled through my phone, rereading the HOA bylaws I downloaded after her first freakout. There it was, buried in the fine print. Property disputes must be resolved via official complaint. Perfect. I'd beat her at her own game. I typed up a quick email to the HOA board, subject line, encroachment issue, and attached my survey. Sent. Now it was her move, and I was itching to see what she'd pull next. As I lay there, Buddy snoring at the foot of my bed, I couldn't shake this electric feeling. This wasn't just about a fence anymore. It was about standing up to the Karens of the world, the ones who think they own everything. I'd started with a dog and a paintbrush, but I was ready to finish this with a knockout. And oh man, was she in for a surprise. I woke up the next day feeling like a general gearing up for battle. My name's Jake Miller, and I just turned Karen Thompson's HOA kingdom upside down with a splash of neon pink paint and a Buddy's Zone sign. That fence, her sacred shrine, was now my war trophy, and I lobbed the first official grenade with my email to the HOA board. Buddy, my loyal Labrador sidekick, was sprawled across the couch, drooling on a cushion, totally unaware he'd sparked this chaos with one well-aimed pea. I scratched his ears, grinning. "You're a legend, Bud," I said, and headed out to check my masterpiece in the daylight. The pink stripe glowed like a beacon, cutting through Karen's white picket fantasy. I stood there, coffee in hand, soaking in the absurdity of it all, my quiet little street now a battlefield. Neighbors were already rubbernecking. Old Mrs. Jenkins across the way gave me a thumbs up from her porch, and Tom texted me a string of laughing emojis. Word was spreading, and I could feel the buzz. But then I saw it, Karen's minivan peeling out of her driveway, tires squealing like she was auditioning for a Fast and Furious sequel. She was on the move, and I knew exactly where she was headed, HOA headquarters. Game on. By mid-afternoon, my inbox pinged. Subject: Urgent HOA meeting, property dispute. I opened it, heart thumping, and there it was, an invite to a special session tomorrow night to address my complaint. Karen's name was CC'd, and I could practically hear her smug little humph through the screen. She'd probably spent all morning rallying her minions, spinning some sob story about her vandalized fence. I leaned back in my chair, cracking my knuckles. She thought she'd corner me with her rulebook? Nah, I'd come prepared. I spent the rest of the day prepping like it was the Super Bowl. I printed my survey, highlighted the encroachment in yellow marker, and dug up every HOA bylaw I could twist in my favor. Rule 14b, no structure may extend beyond property lines without consent. Boom. Rule 22c, unauthorized modifications require board approval. Double boom, she'd never gotten my okay for that fence, I even snapped more pics of my pink stripe, just in case she tried to cry defacement. Buddy watched me pace the living room, tail thumping like he was cheering me on. "We've got this, boy," I said, ruffling his fur. I was pumped, nerves and adrenaline mixing into this wild cocktail of confidence. The meeting rolled around fast. I walked into the community center, survey in hand, wearing my best "I'm not scared of you" flannel. The room was packed, nosy neighbors, board members, and Karen, perched up front like a vulture in pearls. She shot me a death glare as I took a seat, her lips pursed so tight I thought they'd disappear. The board president, a balding guy named Gary, kicked things off. "We're here to address a dispute between Mr. Miller and Mrs. Thompson regarding a boundary issue," he droned. Karen jumped up before he finished, clutching a stack of papers like they were her life raft. "This man," she jabbed a finger at me, "has turned our neighborhood into a circus. He painted my fence, some hideous pink, and put up a ridiculous sign." I stood up, cool as ice. "Actually, Gary, that fence is on my property, 10 centimeters over the line. I've got the survey right here." I held it up, letting the room see the proof. Gasps rippled through the crowd, Mrs. Jenkins even clapped. Karen's face twisted, but she wasn't done. "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "He's mocking our standards. That pink is an eyesore, pure spite." I smirked. "Spite? Nah, Karen, I'm just decorating what's mine. You're the one who built where you shouldn't." The room erupted. Whispers, chuckles, a few oohs. Gary banged his gavel, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen doubled down, slamming her papers on the table. "I've got signatures," she crowed. 10 neighbors agree this is a disgrace. We demand he repaint it white and pay for my distress." I scanned her petition. Half the names were her book club cronies. Weak. I leaned forward, voice steady. "Gary, the bylaws say she's in violation, not me. I'm within my rights. Check the rules." He sighed, flipping through his binder, while Karen fumed, her eyes boring holes into me. The room hung on a thread, and I could feel the tide turning. This wasn't just about a fence anymore. It was me against her reign of terror, and I was loving every second. The HOA meeting room was a pressure cooker, and I, Jake Miller, was standing in the middle of it, grinning like a guy who'd just drawn an ace. Karen Thompson, HOA dictator and my personal nemesis, was clutching her petition, her face a mask of fury, while I held my survey like a shield. That neon pink stripe on Buddy's zone had turned her world upside down, and now the whole neighborhood was watching our showdown. Gary, the board president, was sweating through his polo, flipping pages in his binder as the crowd murmured. I could feel it. This was my moment. Karen wasn't backing down. "This isn't about lines," she hissed, slamming her stack of signatures on the table. "It's about decency. That pink monstrosity is a slap in the face to everyone here." She turned to the room, arms outstretched like she was rallying a revolution. "Who wants to live next to that?" A few of her cronies nodded. Linda from down the street, that guy with the yappy chihuahua, but most folks just shifted in their seats, eyes darting between us. I stepped up, voice calm but loud enough to cut through her drama. "Decency? Huh? Funny, Karen, because I didn't sign off on your fence sitting on my land. That's the real slap." I waved my survey again, and Mrs. Jenkins hooted from the back. "You tell her, Jake." The room buzzed, and Karen's glare could have melted steel. Gary cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "All right, let's see here. Rule 14b. No structure beyond property lines without consent." He squinted at my survey, then hers, some blurry plat map she'd probably scribbled on herself. "Jake's right," he said, almost reluctantly. "The fence encroaches by 10 centimeters. Karen's jaw dropped, and I swear I heard angels sing. "But," she sputtered, "he can't just paint it like that. It's against the aesthetic code." Gary frowned, flipping more pages. "Well, 22C says modifications need approval, but only on HOA-regulated property. That strips his Karen. He can do what he wants." I pumped my fist under the table. Victory tasted like sweet, sweet justice. She wasn't done, though. "Oh no, not Karen." She leaned forward, eyes narrowing to slits. "Fine," she snarled. "You win this round, Miller. But I'm not ripping out my fence. I'll appeal this to the county. And that pink? It's a blight. I'll make sure every neighbor knows what a petty little man you are." Her voice dripped venom, and for a second, I felt the sting. Petty? Me? Nah, this was about principle, and a little fun. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Go ahead, Karen. Appeal it. I'll be here, sipping lemonade by Buddy's zone." A few folks snickered, and she stormed out, heels clacking like gunfire. The meeting wrapped up with Gary muttering about further review, but I walked out on cloud 9. Neighbors slapped my back. Tom even bought me a beer at the bar down the street. "You're a legend, man," he said, toasting my win. But as I clinked his glass, a knot twisted in my gut. Karen's threat wasn't empty. She'd escalate this, and I had to stay sharp. Back home, Buddy greeted me with a slobbery lick, and I plopped on the couch, replaying her words. County appeal? That could drag on, cost money, maybe even force a compromise. I scratched Buddy's ears, muttering, "What's her next play, huh?" Then it hit me. She'd go after my weak spot. The next morning, I found it. A note taped to my mailbox. HOA letterhead, all official looking. Notice of complaint. Excessive noise and pet nuisance. My jaw clenched. Noise. Nuisance. This was about Buddy. Barking, maybe, or just existing. She'd twisted the knife, hitting me where it hurt most. My dog. I stormed inside, grabbed my phone, and called Tom. "She's coming for Buddy now," I said, voice shaking with anger. "Dude," he replied, "she's desperate. You've got this." He was right. She was scrambling, but it lit a fire in me. This wasn't just a fence fight anymore. It was war. I'd protect my boy and my land, no matter what she threw next. I stood in my kitchen, Jake Miller, clutching that HOA noise complaint about Buddy like it was a declaration of war. Karen Thompson had lost the fence battle. My neon pink Buddy zone still stood proud on my land. But now she'd aimed her venom at my dog, my best bud. Excessive noise? Pet nuisance? This was low, even for her. My blood boiled as I pictured her smirking behind her curtains, thinking she'd found my Achilles heel. But if she wanted to play dirty, I'd show her I could play smarter. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I tossed the note on the counter and grabbed Buddy's leash. "Come on, boy," I said, voice tight. "Let's blow off some steam." We hit the street, his tail wagging like a metronome, and I let him sniff every bush, every hydrant, anything to shake the fury bubbling in my chest. That's when I saw it. A "for sale" sign on Karen's lawn. My heart skipped. Was she bailing? Moving out? I squinted. Nah, it was Linda's house next door. Still, it got me thinking. Karen was rattled. That complaint was a desperate swing, and I could use it. I pulled out my phone, snapped a pic of Buddy looking adorable by the pink fence, and posted it online. HOA can't handle this good boy. Likes poured in, Tom, Mrs. Jenkins, even the barista from down the street. The neighborhood was Team Jake, and that felt like armor. Back home, I dug into her complaint. Excessive barking, disturbing the peace, it read. I laughed out loud. Buddy barely barked unless the mailman showed up, and even then, it was more of a "hey, hi" than a ruckus. This was flimsy, a Hail Mary from a woman losing her grip. I fired off an email to Gary, attaching a video I'd taken last week. Buddy snoozing on the porch, silent as a mouse. "Here's your nuisance," I wrote. "Tell Karen to try harder." I hit send, adrenaline pumping. She wanted to drag this to the county over the fence? Fine. I'd bury her in paperwork first. The next day, Tom swung by with coffee and a grin. "Heard about her latest stunt," he said, nodding at the note. "She's unhinged, man." I smirked, sipping my brew. "She's scared, Tom. That pink's driving her nuts." We laughed, but then he got serious. "Watch out, though. She's telling people you're harassing her. Spinning it like she's the victim." My stomach twisted. Harassment? That was rich, coming from the queen of meltdowns. I leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Let her talk. I've got proof, and Buddy's got fans." Tom clapped my shoulder. "You're a madman, Miller." "I love it." That night, I heard it, Buddy barking, sharp and loud. I bolted outside, flashlight in hand, and there she was, Karen, creeping along the fence with a flashlight of her own. "What the hell?" I yelled. She jumped, dropping something, a tape recorder. My jaw dropped as she scrambled to grab it, muttering, "Just checking my property." I shone my light on her. "Recording Buddy to fake a complaint? Real classy, Karen." She froze, then bolted back to her house, leaving the recorder in the grass. I picked it up, heart racing. Jackpot. She'd just handed me gold. I played it inside, 30 seconds of barking, looped. Fake as her smile at block parties. I saved it, grinning like a kid on Christmas. This was it. Her desperation laid bare. I could take this to Gary, the county, whoever, and end her game. But as I patted Buddy's head, a new idea sparked. Why stop at defense? I'd go big. turn her own tricks against her, and make sure she never messed with us again. She thought she could outmaneuver me? Nah, I was just getting started. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at Karen Thompson's tape recorder like it was a loaded gun. My Labrador, Buddy, snoozed by my feet, oblivious to the fact he'd just handed me the key to ending this HOA war. That neon pink, Buddy's zone, had pushed Karen over the edge, and her fake barking recording, caught red-handed in her sneaky night mission, was my checkmate. She'd gone from fence tyrant to desperate schemer, and I was ready to drop the curtain on her reign. This wasn't just about a fence or a dog anymore. It was about winning, and I could taste it. The next morning, I woke up electric. I grabbed the recorder, my survey, and every email I'd sent Gary, then marched to the HOA office like a man on a mission. Gary was there, sipping coffee, looking like he'd aged a decade since our last meeting. "Jake," he groaned, "what now?" I slapped the evidence on his desk, survey, recorder, a USB with the looped barking file. "Karen's done, Gary. She's faking complaints to frame Buddy. This ends today." His eyes widened as he played the tape, that tinny bark echoing in his cramped office. "She recorded this?" he stammered. I nodded, grinning. "Caught her last night. She's got nothing left." Gary rubbed his temples, muttering about escalation, but I wasn't backing off. "She's appealed the fence to the county," I said. "Let's settle this. My land, my rules, and her lies exposed." He sighed, then nodded. "I'll call an emergency vote. Bring it to the board tonight." I walked out, fist clenched in triumph. The neighborhood was about to see Karen's mask slip, and I couldn't wait. Word spread fast. By dusk, the community center was packed again, a circus of whispers and sidelong glances. Karen strutted in, chin high, clutching her appeal papers like a lifeline. I sat front row, Buddy's leash in my mind's eye, ready to fight for us both. Gary kicked off, voice shaky. "We've got new evidence. Mr. Miller's claim stands, but Mrs. Thompson's complaint about his dog, well, it's fabricated." He played the tape. The room gasped. Mrs. Jenkins cackled, Tom hooped, and Karen's face went white. "That's not mine," she shrieked, but her voice cracked, and no one bought it. I stood, calm but loud. "She built on my land, Gary, then faked a noise issue when I took it back. That pink. It's mine, and it stays." The crowd murmured. Some cheered, some glared, but Gary raised a hand. "Vote time. All in favor of dismissing her complaints and upholding Jake's property rights." Hands shot up. Mrs. Jenkins, Tom, half the room. Opposed. Karen's cronies raised theirs, but it wasn't enough. "Motion passes," Gary said, banging his gavel. I exhaled, victory washing over me like a wave. Karen bolted, papers fluttering behind her, and I stepped outside to cheers. Tom slung an arm around me. "You crushed it, man." Mrs. Jenkins hugged me, whispering, "That pink's growing on me." I laughed, the weight lifting. Back home, I cracked a beer on my porch, Buddy sprawled beside me, and stared at that glowing fence. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement. Karen could appeal all she wanted. I'd outplayed her, and the neighborhood knew it. A week later, her "for sale" sign went up, not Linda's, hers. I smirked, sipping my brew. Guess the pink was too much after all. Buddy barked once, a happy yap, and I patted his head. "We did it, boy. You're the real MVP." The war was over, and we'd come out legends. So what's your take? Did I go too far with the pink, or was it the perfect jab? Drop a comment. I want to hear your thoughts. And hey, if you love this ride, hit that subscribe button. Buddy and I might just have more stories up our sleeve.